Okay, you're live. This is not okay. I already did the spring reset video for the three of you or whatever who watched it. Was the early spring reset episode 306. So this is more of a reaction video to a different two different videos. One which I promised to do in the near future, so we're finally doing it, and that will be part two. And then part one, we're starting with the another guy did a video about the GQ list. Now he didn't type up or copy down their list in an easy way for me to read off without going back and retranscribing his whole video. But he did list his selections, some of which were the same as theirs, and others were different companies and different products that he would substitute instead. And this is not technically the capsule wardrobe where you're trying to make everything interchangeable per se. It was more just kind of everything a man would ever need for, well, they didn't specify casual, but basically a casual wardrobe because, again, if you have an office job or, other kind of professional occupation, a lot of these items won't work for that, and you'll need half a dozen suits or whatever that aren't linen or seersucker or some other thing. And the list was a little like he was, like I said, modifying it from what theirs was to what he thought was a little more essential, and so I'm modifying from his list slightly. So I'm not going to say everything I agree with twice or whatever. I'm mostly only going to talk about the things where I disagree, because that's where it kind of matters more if you're really on board with like a lot of that. And then part two will be the other, like I said, if we get that far, hopefully this doesn't take forever. I don't usually like to make videos on Mondays, but here we are, and it's also the wrong time of the day. So if I start sweating even more profusely, I apologize. And a big disclaimer, I don't endorse so many brands specifically. I do a lot of kind of head-to-head challenges to kind of see which brand I think performs better overall, or I try to, and a lot of times it doesn't come up very definitive in the time frame that we would like. So, I don't say, you have to buy this brand or whatever, and this isn't the buy stuff channel. If you don't think you're going to use an item, then why would you add it to your collection in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, this is also a channel about, improving your overall style in the casual space, again, more often than occupation related and that kind of thing. So yeah, if you've had a negative experience with some specific company, I won't insist that you like them, as much as I do, or just because I do, or whatever. Like, that's not the purpose of this. And then recent comments, I had to, disclaimer part two: overalls are missing from this, cowboy hats are missing from this, and other brim hats and certain things. So it's not, it's like I said, it's not 100% my list. But he said he gets a lot of requests from people who are building a wardrobe from scratch. Okay, I don't know how many specific people are ever actually doing that without having pre-existing items that you're integrating in or out or whatever. But okay, that premise, I guess. I've never gotten that comment. I think I appeal to a much older demographic, so it's not college students just finding their way or whatever after graduation into the real world or whatever that I, partly try to attract with this kind of content, and, I guess fail miserably most of the time. We'll see. Spread the word. I've enabled the buy me a coffee thing that I, usually mention at the end, and I'll, boycott Tinder. I have a couple videos about that I won't go into that whole spiel. Okay, so the first category, he said their categories were all over the place and scattered, so he had codified it for us, and so that's convenient. So the first category here was pants, also known as trousers or other things. Number one was the Levi's 501 jean. So again, if you're not a dad jean enthusiast, or you think they're too cowboy or whatever, obviously there's other types of jeans, but won't have a classic silhouette or, you know, whatever that he's saying makes the pants less trendy and more, you know, longevity, although whether or not they're actually more durable, how, you know, compared to other jeans that might cost more and blah, blah, blah. He didn't get into that, the whole selvage thing. And he was saying at the beginning of his too, you know, if you don't think you're going to wear, you know, certain items, then, you know, don't get them. But then I don't know which ones were exactly all his and which ones were not. But he had said vintage OG 107 fatigue pants. Also, these are American military styles that have become popular in, I don't know, New York City and Japan primarily, I guess. Or I don't know, some stuff might be coming out of Seattle or whatever for the other kind of hipsters. I haven't seen hardly anybody wearing some of these styles. But so maybe they're trying to hype them into a hit because they're getting a kickback. I don't know. These fatigue pants are the sateen ones, not the BDU with the lace bottoms and the cargo pockets. These are the older style, more Korean War era. I think they originated-ish. Maybe it was World War II. I think it was a little bit later. The kind I used to get at the swap meet or whatever when I was young, and they were like $7 a pair or something back then, and now they're like $200 or $300 a pair. So it's a bit of an investment, but they're supposedly a better fabric. I don't have any of this style currently because I outgrew all those other ones when I was 11 and haven't been able to afford to replace them in the last 5 years or whatever since this started to catch on. Then the next was vintage chinos. Now, again, they said Ralph Lauren. I don't have any Ralph Lauren ones here. I don't have any in this room, but I have 800,000 pairs of different kinds of chino pants. Some from JCPenney, some from, there's St. John's Bay, but there's also Dockers, which is a Levi's subsidiary or whatever. And then I have Orvis, which are heavier duty, and some other ones. I don't John Blair, I think, being the main brand, and those are Chinese ones where sometimes the fabric and the texture isn't as nice or whatever, but they do okay for a season or two. Yeah. So the next was, and I don't really have, yeah, I mean, again, if you're office casual, maybe you can get away with Levi's jeans. Otherwise, you're looking at, he did not specify if this, I was going to read the list and then read the comments later, but I guess I got to skip down first real quick. I assume this means types of pants, not only specific pairs as usual. Like you can have more than one to get through a week, right? If you only have one pair of Levi's, you're in trouble maybe. But if you're wearing them office casual, then you still might need 2 pairs of chinos or whatever. Or you might even want some different colors. Again, not just khaki. Sorry, I'm sweating. So the next category was T-shirts. The first being the vintage ringer tee. I guess you're supposed to be finding these on eBay. Again, he likes talking about stuff like that, but not specifying that he's, well, he usually gives us measurements, but he's much smaller than I am. So me finding this kind of stuff used is a joke because they're all worn out and you can only get smalls and mediums and that kind of thing most of the time. But printed graphic T-shirts, I guess, was kind of the overall. And again, that's not necessarily office appropriate. If you want to be a billboard guy on the weekends, you're already doing that probably. So Number 5, rock bands and everything else. Number 5, pocket. Superheroes. Pocket tee. He was saying he didn't like the pocket ones. That was kind of personal choice. He would substitute often for non-pocket, obviously. Yeah. I don't know if that's the Uniqlo Supima cotton tee or not. Probably. I don't know anything about that brand. I don't have anything by that brand. But they pop up a lot in British references more than here, I think. Next 6 was the Ralph Lauren polo. Again, I have plenty of polo shirts, and of course, similar is the rugby shirt, which has long sleeves, but there's different weaves of polo fabric. So this one, the Ralph Lauren, I don't have any of theirs. I'm not familiar with theirs. I assume they're the different, more textured peak or whatever weave than the more t-shirt fabric of this. I have different ones for different. I think these ones are a little bit cooler in the warm weather, but those ones are supposed to have a little more airflow, but the fabric is thicker, so I think it kind of works against you more than for you. So I don't wear the textured ones as much, but I have a bunch. Next was the ribbed tank top. Personally, I prefer the smooth tank top to that. They usually cost way more than getting the ones in the 3-pack for some reason. I don't know why. But similar to the tank top, I think polo shirts are pretty much underwear also and not really dress shirts, although people do use them for office casual outfits in certain, pink collar jobs or whatever. Not so much. Sometimes blue collar, almost never white collar. So because white collar. Although this has a white collar, but it's a sports shirt, not a shirt you wear with a tie. So obviously. But this is just for contrast and, all that. And some of them have the stiffer collars and the better. This one has stays in it, but they're flimsy, flexible things, not real stiffeners. But they're, there to keep the points pointy instead of curling up as much. So you can watch for that. Whereas a lot of the polo shirts, they curl all under or they twist up and that kind of thing. So then regular shirts, again, back to Ralph Lauren, vintage Ralph Lauren shirt. How vintage, what year, nothing is specified. Again, if you're doing eBay searches, vague keywords will help you in some places and hurt you in others. So, how specific do you want to get? Because people might not be thinking the same keywords you are. So you might be missing the listing that you want because you're trying to be specific and they're being vague, and vice versa. But basically this was any kind of sports shirt, it doesn't have to be, Ralph Lauren. It didn't have to be, a specific pattern or anything. They could be stripes, they could be solids, they could be plaids. This was, again, just remove the word Ralph Lauren and substitute sport shirt, and you're kind of on the right track. But then this one would be more of a work shirt, a little more of a blue collar labor shirt. You could do it office casual, but it's a little less refined, so not quite on the same beaten path. Then was chambray shirt, which this is not quite a chambray shirt. It's also not quite an Oxford cloth shirt. It's a twill shirt. So you can see the diagonal lines, which makes it similar to jeans, basically, more than, whereas this is a chambray shirt. It's just tan instead of, so you can see it's more of a canvas weave with that cross hatching, which is also more similar to the Oxford cloth shirt, which somehow got left off this list, but is technically, it's supposed to be in there, the button down shirt, the yada yada yada. Okay, so, and I did not bring in a denim shirt and a flannel shirt. Well, it's already kind of too warm here for denim and flannel shirts. So I wasn't going to be wearing them anyway. Then next was the Brooks Brothers white shirt. Well, it doesn't have to be Brooks Brothers. Obviously, you can get white shirts at JCPenney's or Kohl's or LL Bean or whatever. Although I don't know if LL Bean really has true dress shirts anymore. They seem to have, gone even more into the hiking direction than the office casual direction. But they might still have some proper white shirts if you find the right section. But they might be button downs, so they still might be office casual more than true dress. But then again, a true dress shirt doesn't belong in this list anyway, because that only goes with a business suit most of the time. Anyway, because that's formal and not casual. So then next was chambray shirt, which I showed you the chambray shirt, but chambray shirt could have been lumped up, like I said, in the other section, because a chambray shirt is just a more work shirt than but it can be more of a casual shirt than the other work shirt, which was the heavier twill, which is just a lighter version of, again, denim or khaki. So, but usually chambray is blue. Madras shirt being the next one. He didn't include like Hawaiian shirts and seersucker shirts and other shirts in this category. Some Madras shirts will work better, again, being in vintage number 9 kind of territory, than its own category. And then other Madras shirts will be definitely vacation kind of vibe. So that will depend on the shirt you get and what you plan to do with it. So yeah, chambray and Oxford is pretty much the exact same thing. Both office casual, more chambray used more as office casual than workwear now, even though in World War II it was, the Navy uniform or one of the Navy uniforms. I have almost no use for white shirts personally ever anymore at much. Madras is okay, but seersucker I get more use of overall, more going into the summer, and also linen. I forgot linen, but linen is similar to chambray, but lighter weave. Since seersucker resembles Oxford enough for less casual use, I've talked about this before. I have. Oops. Linen shirt. The other one's in the. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just these overalls are heavy. There's a linen shirt. So you can see it's also another crosshatch weave, but the one I wanted to show was the pinstripe, but that's a seersucker as opposed to a linen. So, okay. And again, I use different ones at different times for different things, but LL Bean has different colors, usually not just blue. Sometimes they have solid white or that look like solid white. Which I consider more of a summer thing than a spring thing. But if you need a white shirt or you want a white shirt and you don't want a super dress shirt, again, that's an option that you might want to look into. And let's see, flannel, like I said, too warm now. I've done so many videos about flannel shirts, so we're not going to get into that. And canvas, heavier canvas, same as denim for real work, labor, blue collar again. Typically heavier or similar fabric weight to this, and not as casual. Okay. Then it went into shorts. No, I'm sorry, shoes. Let's do shorts first. So one is vintage cargo shorts. So to not match my outfit at all. Nope, not here. Okay. Well, these are cargo shorts, but these aren't vintage. They're BDU. And I had a pair in here, and I guess they migrated. The vintage ones, the difference between the shorts kept changing the length, but with the cargo shorts, you weren't able to make them, 7 inches or whatever, typically, unless, because the pocket takes up too much length. And so that was always kind of a negotiation, whereas a lot of the ones I was finding, again, at places like JCPenney were not, well, I didn't consider them vintage at the time, but I guess they're vintage now. But again, I'm not typically buying a ton of shorts used, because good luck finding my size. Again, not already worn out. But I don't find it difficult to find any cargo shorts at department stores and whatnot still. And a little bean. Certain items they do. Oh, yeah. Certain items they don't have a. Lost my train of thought. Well, anyway, this is a denim shirt. For those of you who don't know what a denim shirt looks like. The two types, well, there was three. He talked about different ones that are in the next category. When we did cutoffs, though, when I was younger, when we take, because denim shorts he lists here later. Originally, denim shorts were almost all cutoffs because you just took your jeans and chopped them off when the knees went out. Now you can mostly find them hemming. Sometimes you can find denim with cargo pockets, but most of those are terrible. Whereas the other cargo shorts, most of the time the fabric is either ripstop, like what I'm wearing, again in the BDU fabric, or twill, which is literally the same as this again. But I had some other ones, some Madras ones and seersucker ones or something, but most of those don't come in cargo shorts. So then next was Patagonia baggy shorts. I'm not familiar with that company. I think they're one of those overpriced ones that are Gorp Core or something. But those you're getting back down into, I think, 5-inch length instead of 7-inch length. I'm not positive. And some of them he had called hiking shorts, and those are can be a slightly different cargo pockets where the pockets are smaller and relocated, not just on the sides. And then they can usually be 7 inches instead of 9 or 11 inches. Then was Birdwell swim trunks. Apparently Birdwell was like one of the first true swim trunk companies. Again, not a brand I've ever bought, but you can find swim trunks pretty easily starting around this time of year. And there's different styles, the ones with the mesh inserts but he was saying, most people don't use those as shorts, but you can in certain situations. Then boxer shorts. I assume this was a joke, so we can go ahead and skip that. Obviously, that is literal underwear. So denim shorts aren't exactly stylish, but then, most people would insist now that cargo shorts have been out of vogue for at least a decade already anyway. They were already joking about that in the movie Superbad way back when. But it's pretty much still what I mostly use. But I do have some regular chino ones too, khaki kind of and other color kind of things that he didn't discuss. That should have been a separate category instead of boxer shorts or, whatever. So then shoes, like I said, I skipped that other one. So then the first one was a specific brand again, Sebago loafers. I don't know that brand, but I do have one pair of loafers here that I didn't bother to dig out. For me, loafers are mostly meh. I've always said I will take boat shoes over these always, whereas he was the opposite. He said he didn't like boat shoes. He preferred loafers. Okay, both are technically preppy wear. I was watching another video, and there's different kinds of boat shoes. I have whole videos about the 7 different styles or whatever that I have in my nautical and my footwear, or somewhere in the other menu. The preppy look, being a separate thing too. I had talked about this in different places. I was watching a video talking about how, you know, influencers are trying to sell you on, you know, if you have this product, you'll live this life. Well, okay, I don't promise you that if you have a, you know, a rugby or other kind of boaty shirt and a pair of these that you're going to be on a boat and in a yacht or whatever, but it is still a nicer aesthetic than a lot of other casual aesthetics. So that's why I've kind of gravitated to that for the warmer months. The next was Havian's flip flops. I don't own any of those. I don't really like flip flops. They're shower shoes most of the time. Some are better quality than others, but most people are thinking of those spongy nothing ones that are literally just from going to the shower to the sand at the, you know, the ocean or the wearing in the locker room at the community pool or whatever. Then the next one, he had said the Birkenstock Bostons. I don't know that particular ones, the mules or the clogs or whatever they call them, but I do like Birkenstocks. This is what I would wear rather than any kind of flip flops. There's also the ones with the back strap here that might be better for if you're actually walking and not just using them as, you know, house sandals or slippers or whatever. So yeah, you can't fool me. He was saying he didn't really care for the Birkenstocks. Nope, I like that they have a bit of arch support. It's not perfect, but flip flops are definitely no-go territory in my current last many years. Where did I see? Okay. Next was Mason Margella Gats. I have no idea what that is. I don't know. Then was vintage cowboy boots. He didn't buy vintage cowboy boots. He got some like expensive ones. I don't know if they sent him free ones or he bought them, but he definitely didn't have vintage ones. But he had ones that were similar to classic, I guess I would say, cowboy boots. But cowboy boots have changed shapes. They have different toe shapes. They can have different shaft heights. They can have different heel heights. Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of different permutations of cowboy boots. So what he was literally saying is what we don't call a roper boot, what we call a Western riding boot. That this is not the same thing. It's the wrong boot. I have Packer boots, but basically a heel about this high, but not with a logger outsole, and basically with a toe shape, maybe more almond than this. Not necessarily. Square toes have become in vogue again, but to me, a classic riding boot has a more pointed toe than this. And of course, no laces, but higher 12 or 13 inch shaft. This one's 10. And pull on. Right. So anything in that. But of course, there's a lot of those that aren't full leather now. There's a lot of those that are nylon uppers, nylon lowers, this and that. They don't age correctly. They don't look great. They don't wear the same. But if you're in a pinch, they can be waterproof or more water resistant than leather. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, 19. Like I said, I'm doing these out of order, so I already did 22 through 26 when I did shorts. But this was Converse Chuck 70s. Again, I don't have any of the Chuck 70s. I have the other Chucks, which are not the same as the ones that I used to get back in the 90s or whatever. Ever since they moved to China, they've changed a lot of things. They're not the same shoe. They don't weigh the same. I did a whole video about this that like nobody watched way back when. So you might want to check that out. But a classic sneaker look, but again with no arch support. The outsoles are not great. They don't last forever. I've had better luck with the outsoles on Vans, but the tops tend to wear out first because they're not reinforced in the same way as the Chuck Taylors with the rubberized toe and all that kind of thing. So your mileage may vary, but the Vans again and the Chucks can both work for a nautical look, depending on the colors you get. Because red, white, and blue are acceptable colors for nautical. It doesn't have to be green. I'm just wearing green today. It doesn't have to be brown because you can get colored leather in blue or suede, etc., in these also, and mix and match and do that kind of fun stuff. Again, might be more casual than office casual, and I definitely wouldn't recommend wearing Chuck Taylors or Vans to your office, even if it is Casual Friday, whereas this you could probably get away with without being too casual, because loafers are technically about the same amount of casual, although loafers are a little less sporty and a little more dressy because they're typically all leather and blah, blah, blah. I still think you could wear most boat shoes to an office casual situation. Then next was leather slippers. I don't have any leather slippers. I have a couple pairs of cheap suede ones that are insulated but not that warm for winter. I guess maybe you get what you pay for, but I don't know what the leather slippers are for. I thought some were more similar to like opera pumps or something. I don't know if they're supposed to be like driving shoes or if they're just really, really, really expensive bumming around the house things. Which again, if I'm bumming around the house, most of the time in springtime, it's already too warm for slippers, and I'm just using these. Because they're not necessarily warm enough for winter all the time, but they're definitely too warm for me right now. And then next was black boots. It kind of depends on your aesthetic. I tend to buy a lot more brown boots. Again, these are way too rugged for most office casual use, and not what he's talking about at all. So I don't really have a good example of that in here, but I have tons and tons and tons of videos about boots because a lot of people treat this like strictly a boot channel. So if you're actually watching this content for some reason, good on you. Thanks. Glad you're here. And then go watch all my boot content that everybody else thinks is more important, I guess. So black boots, I think the most popular ones are like the Doc Marten ones, which are really low quality and that kind of thing. And that's probably what he meant without being too specific. But most black boots are either combat boots or work boots. But there are some that are more dress boots. I do have one pair. If I can get there without too much hassle. You can get, sorry for the delay, folks, because I didn't really think this all the way through, but you can get black wingtips and things from some places still. I don't know if Thursday has this exact color, but this was like a $200 boot, not a super high quality boot, but meant to look more dressy, definitely almost office casual, but that chunky outsole kind of kills it because they put a hiking outsole. So this is meant to be, for when you're dressing up in your tweed outfit or even in your kilt and going for your day walking to look, a little more put together whilst also being out in nature, not in the city or an office. But you could get this resold if you really, wanted to, instead of buying a pair of regular wingtips for probably around the same price at the mall. And I can't usually find too many good quality wingtips in my price range, so I've had to opt for a lot of mall shoes. So these will work in a pinch, and that's kind of why I have them, even though I haven't, resold them. But again, kind of a neither here or there kind of thing, because typically if I'm doing outdoorsy kind of stuff like that, I don't want black, I want brown. Black I would prefer for an office, and then if I was going to an office, I would probably not wear the boot. I would probably wear the derby shoe, and it would already have a more urbane or regular outsole than a commando hiking sole. So there you go. But at the time, those were a good price, and it, you know, seemed like a decent little fit without having to hurt my brain. Like, okay, send them, and I'll just figure out what to use them with. So where were we? Okay, so next category we have moved to. Well, I think you should have done that category first and then done this category, but coats and jackets he put before hoodies and jumpers, or what we call sweaters in the States. So fine, coats and jackets. He did not include sport jackets at all for some reason, or maybe GQ didn't. I don't know who dropped the ball on that one, because I thought that would be a whole big category. And then let's see. I have next was raincoats. I have a raincoat that likely will never get as much use as my cowboy boots, etc. Yeah, the trench coat was in there somewhere, and I have one, and I like never ever use it. But I don't live in a very wet area like London. So the first one was vintage Lee Rider denim jacket, which is a copy of the Levi's one, which again will be a similar denim, but a heavier denim than a typical denim shirt by, I don't know, 4 or 5 ounces or whatever. And of course, you know, the famous trucker cut. The sleeves can be too long on those, though. He didn't talk about when you're not skinny, about when you have to size up, and then you come into all kinds of problems, that sort of thing. Then Our Legacy leather blouson. I don't know who Our Legacy is, but this was some version of a pilot jacket or a motorcycle jacket, I guess. Vintage Burberry trench coat. Again, these are I assume the rainproof ones, not like the duffel coats. Burberry probably being way more expensive than some other brands. Then we got into the Gorp core bit, the Arc Terry Gore-Tex jacket. There's lots of different brands. Well, Patagonia is probably one of them that makes more of that kind of thing. Again, I don't live in that kind of climate, so I don't really have a lot of that kind of stuff. When it does rain, I'm sometimes wishing I had like the perfect thing. But I had one that was like a snowboarding jacket once, and wearing that in rain, it seemed like the rain just went right through, or I was sweating and the water was still getting my shirt wet from my sweat. I'm still not positive. Maybe both. It like definitely didn't do what I wanted it to do. And it cost $70 at the time, which seemed like $1 million, and I sold it on eBay way back when. 31 is the track jacket. Well, that's going to be the non-Gore-Tex version of a lightweight thing, which I agree with him that those are harder to style, because they are definitely usually brighter colors or something odd about them that makes them not really, you know, capsule wardrobe friendly, but they're not the kind of thing you're wearing inside the office. They're the kind of thing you're wearing to the office if it's a light rain where you don't need a trench coat. So again, I'm not buying a true track jacket, but I do have some. I showed one of them in one of the nautical videos. It's more of a windbreaker, and so it's still bright. It's same colors as this, and it's not a professional jacket, but it's, you know, good for breezy evenings in, you know, spring, late spring, early summer. And then 32 is vintage M65 field jacket. Again, U.S. military version, not some other European issue. They all have a fetish for this 1950s kind of stuff. Or M65 being the 60s version of the 50s ones, where they were updated with, you know, the different Velcro in the hood or whatever, instead of all the buttons. I guess that's personal preference. You might like the buttony ones better. Again, it's going to be the same kind of or similar sateen kind of fabric as those fatigue pants. So if you wear it with the fatigue pants, you look like you're an extra in MASH the movie or whatever. So I don't know how much that's supposed to go, but I guess you could get khaki fatigue pants instead of the green ones, maybe, or blue or something. And it wouldn't look as weird. But of course, if you wear the blue jeans with the M65, you might also look like Rambo. Add in your heavy duty boots. Well, that, yeah, I really don't see a lot of guys wearing that. You know, again, that's some urban street thing. Because when I was wearing that when I was in high school, it was because I was unpopular and it cost $8 at the swap meet, and it was not as insulated as I would have liked, but it repelled some rain. So that's why I had that one, because I didn't have a Gore-Tex or a blouse and leather or a trench coat. I had a field jacket, and it lasted me for 6 or 7 years until I finally got rid of it because it looked terrible at that point because I got it used and yada yada yada. Then, sorry, I'm just cleaning up as I go. Hoodies, jumpers. So the first thing was the sweater vest. I did a whole bunch of stuff about sweater vests before. I don't have one in here. For some reason, though, the cardigan got left off their list, and this one I have is a vest. So I can show that. It's similar to a sweater vest because it's technically a sweater and a vest, but it's not the pullover style. And I have the other one here that's the cable knit. It's also technically a sweater vest, but I didn't end up wearing this year because it got hot all of a sudden before I even wore half of my wool stuff. But sweater vest can come in cotton or wool or even cashmere and some other fabrics and blah, blah, blah. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Yes, I have a bunch of them. I don't see a lot of other people wearing them, but maybe they're catching on again. Don't know. Then we have the wait, hang on one second. Yeah. The Uniqlo, again with that brand that I don't know at all. Merino wool crew neck versus, well, he was saying cashmere sweaters can be ridiculously overpriced. I agree. But if you want good quality cashmere, you're looking at like $600 or $700 maybe. There's always some beautiful one in a catalog that I really, really want, but I just absolutely cannot justify spending that because I already have 600 wool and cotton sweaters that I never get to wear. Then was but crew neck, again, I don't always want crew neck. A lot of times I want V-neck, not just in my sweater vests. He didn't go into that, shoulda. Then the Ralph Lauren rugby, again, not the same as this. This should have been up in the other shirts category because it's not a hoodie. It's not a sweater. It's not as heavy duty as a sweater. It's heavier than a t-shirt, that's for sure, but it's basically a long sleeve polo shirt, not a sweatshirt. Then was the zip hoodie. Why he said zip when he was wearing pullover, I don't know, but okay. Either or. I personally own hoodies and hardly ever wear them. Yeah, maybe someday. We'll see. I used to wear them, and they didn't usually last as long as I would think. And then I'd get bored and cut the sleeves or something, and they'd unravel and blah, blah, blah. And I'd ruin them prematurely and waste $13 or whatever. Then Bleu de Chauffe Fisherman Jumper. Okay, obviously I don't know that brand, but Fisherman Jumper, again, this is his wool sub-in for other cotton thing. I don't remember. But again, yeah, the cable, the Iran cable. You won't be able to see it very well here. That was more or less what he meant. There's other kinds. There's the Fair Isle ones and the Guernsey ones and the Guernsey. I said it wrong. Gansey. I always messed that up. I was talking about that in the Iron Snail video last year or a few months ago or whatever. The Gansey sweaters, yes, can also be a textured option that's not boring, but they gonna cost you a lot less than the cashmere ones for sure. But merino being a lot less itchy, saved the day. Right. And then next was, again, out of order here. So I'm going to do them out of order on purpose here. So suits, so navy blue suits, true navy suits, that is, as opposed to just blue suits that people call navy that aren't truly navy. There's different shades of blue. Obviously, I think gray suits might also be useful, and some people might like brown ones or whatever. Why they went so far afield in some of these categories to try and be too basic or something. Again, if you have an office job, you're going to need more than one suit. If you don't have an office job, then a blue one might be the one you want, or a gray one might be the one you want, or you might still want 2 or 3. Again, he didn't mention this so much, I would opt for not black. Even at a funeral, navy will be acceptable in place of black and will age better and look better for other functions and blah, blah, blah. Then next was double-breasted blazer. You don't need that hardly at all. Again, I know it's a nautical thing. It's a staple for, what you're supposed to integrate with this and that, but chances are you're not wearing that double-breasted blazer. And again, that one usually should be true navy, but can be a lighter blue if you want a more sporty color, and can be another color if you're really going sporty, or stripes. And we'll be talking about that again in a minute when we get to pinstripes. I know this video is going on forever. I don't think that section will be as long as this one. I'm talking slow and we're almost done. Next was tuxedo. He said the same thing. Unless you're going to black tie events all the time, you probably will never need a tuxedo. Again, I think a tuxedo might be slightly more useful than a plain black suit, just because at least it's unique. But yeah. And then the linen suit, which, again, you can do linen. It kind of bunches and crinkles. This is obviously lighter weight than the jacket fabric will be, so it's not in too sad of shape from just being folded up on the shelf over there. But linen can be kind of a dodgy fabric, but it's supposed to be breathable and stuff. I still find the jackets, once you're putting on the jacket on top of the shirt, if it's hot, it's hot. I don't know how these guys do it in the TV shows or whatever. I went to a graduation. It wasn't even summer yet, and I took it was not a linen jacket, but it was one of the LL Bean tropic weight ones, and I wore it for about 8 minutes while we walked in the gate, and then it was off the entire rest of the time. There was other guys there in their business suits, the older men, who I don't know how they were doing that without falling over, wearing full wool blend or wool suits or whatever. Don't ask me. I don't know. I can't even wear a linen jacket in summer like that. But linen suit, I think you could also get separates and break them up and achieve almost the same effect without looking so anachronistic, like an old movie character. Kind of bears speculation, but give it a shot. I don't think they have. If you can't find a suit that you like for the price you want, I think you'll be able to find linen pants and a linen jacket that will go together well enough to carry without being a true suit for reasonable amount of money. If, again, you're not necessarily going to get as much wear out of it as a shirt like this or whatever. And again, we're talking strictly office casual, and linen suits will not necessarily be court appropriate ever. I don't know what the rules are if you're a corporate lawyer or whatever. Okay, so last category was accessories, and he said they threw in everything but the kitchen sink in here. So yeah, but most of these are self-explanatory. So he had said two different kinds of belts. The McCoy Western belt, which is a heavy bison leather, which is a casual work belt. Again, casual work, not office casual. And then the Uniqlo Italian belt, which is a dress belt, which is, again, more dressy probably than this. So I don't know if there's a happy middle ground in there somewhere that is more what you're really looking for, probably, or at least a lot cheaper maybe than, well, the Uniqlo is probably not very expensive, and I don't know how the McCoy would be compared to some other brands. And, you know, how durable the bison leather is going to be compared to blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to be a nice leather for certain things, but I always thought it was pretty thick and chunky in the jacket that I got, whereas certain other brands have hats where maybe they've been able to pare back the leather to make it more supple for the tensile strength and less rigid and thick. I don't know, because I couldn't imagine wearing my leather jacket as a hat in, you know, that same leather at all. Then JMM sunglasses. I don't know that brand, but I think those were the Ray-Ban type, kind of classic 60s looking Wayfarers type of thing instead of aviators. It depends on your outfit. He was saying, you know, you don't really need more than one pair of sunglasses. I don't wear a lot of sunglasses, but I disagree because I think Ray-Bans look better with certain outfits and aviators look better with other outfits. And then there's other kinds that are more trendy or whatever that I don't bother with. Vintage silk necktie. Well, he said necktie, not bow tie. But again, vintage, I would substitute the word classic to just mean standard, or, you know, more or less a normal type, not a skinny new wave tie, not a big fat 1920s gangster tie, you know, movie gangster or whatever. You know, we're not in costume here. We're just wearing a casual, again, outfit. But skinnier ties on a younger man will still work okay for that if it's not too skinny. But certain channels love the square end knit ties. That's a real gamble, more than a standard diamond bottom kind of silk tie. Cartier watch. Again, why Cartier? I don't know why their watches would be any more preferable. I don't wear watches, but again, different watches for different situations according to watch enthusiasts, because there's dressier watches and sportier watches. So again, finding something in the mid that doesn't necessarily belong in either of those categories might be the way to go. Uniqlo colorful socks. So instead of just regular dress socks or something, I don't know. Again, this Uniqlo, I'm not shopping this brand at all. Ebbets field cap. I did a whole video about Ebbets last year at some point. I don't have one in here right now. I have a bunch of them actually that I got on like clearance and stuff last year that I complained about some of the sizing. But I don't wear them as much because the wool instead of cotton factor in the heat, and they can be harder to pair if you're going for a less vintage look, especially like office casual. You know, how much do you want to look, again, like you're kind of trying to look like you're going to college in the early 60s or something, then maybe. But of course, the new modern baseball caps, the MLB branded ones and such, they're polyester now, not wool anymore. So I don't know when they changed that, 2 or 3 years ago, probably. So I don't really want to collect those too much anymore. I did a video about that, and I was really annoyed. And that has been a thing. Not so much because the fabric is changed, but because the price didn't go down when they changed to the cheaper fabric that I don't really want. The price went up or stayed about the same as the wool ones. And that ain't right, as you know. Then the last thing was the gold chain necklace. Okay, I'm not a girl. I don't wear that kind of jewelry. Okay, I know that was kind of long, and we're only at part 2, but I promised I was going to do the pinstripes, so we're gonna plow ahead and finish this. So this was a different video and another reaction, but this should be much shorter. So the note on pinstripes, that it was only from earlier this month, so this hasn't been too delayed. I do have, let's see, I do have the polyester one that I got for mostly a Roaring 20s look. That was this suit. Again, these are only the trousers, but it's kind of a black. When we say pinstripes, we mean vertical, not horizontal. There are kind of stripes that can be thin stripes that are horizontal that are not typically called pinstripes. And then there can be wider ones, and they have different names, and I'm not entirely positive of all the exact widths of what goes with what's a pencil stripe as opposed to a pin stripe and all that. And then there's cable stripes where it's a little more of a pattern than just a. This one's actually dots very closely together. So would you call it a point stripe? I have no idea. But if we can get in close enough, yeah, you can see little dots. But it's not technically a chain stripe because it's not that intricate of a pattern, even though it's mimicking that pattern. So I got this full suit that, again, kind of more of a costume piece. It's polyester. It was cheap. I didn't get it to wear it to work on a daily basis kind of thing. But I could still wear it to the odd wedding or some such occasion if I really had to, where, you know, it was dressy enough, but not super casual, but not, you know, I'm not in a tuxedo, I'm not getting married, that kind of thing. But for whatever reason, the people are old fashioned or something and they want everyone in suits. I've never seen that on an RSVP, but I'm saying if I got one, maybe. Oops. I suppose I could wear the trousers with, you know, he was talking about breaking up the outfit, similar to what I was talking about with the linen stuff earlier. These trousers especially, I could easily wear with an odd blazer more readily than wearing the jacket separately and trying to pass that off as a sport jacket, especially when I already have like Glen Check sport jackets and, you know, stuff like that in better materials. You know, if you don't have any better materials and you only have one suit, chances are it's not the pinstripe suit you're buying. It's that navy suit or that gray suit we were talking about earlier. Again, this is black, but charcoal would be a better color overall. Like, this was the option. Yeah, they also had like a kind of a rust colored that they called tan or something. And I had a vest of that to use as an odd vest, but it was too small, so I got rid of it. I think I showed it in one of my earlier videos. Way back, like episode 3 or 7 or whatever. This was where he was talking about different color shirts and pairings and stuff. So I said I prefer the white collar with the stripe shirt, similar to kind of this idea where you have the white collar and then the vertical stripes in a, you know, usually it'll be alternating like blue and white, whatever, kind of similar to that seersucker one or whatever that I put away earlier. But with a wider stripe, usually more bold than the soft pastel-y powder blues and things. But not so much the French cuffs much. And I like bow ties, but maybe less with that type of shirt or with this effect going on. Although certain bow ties can have a stripe pattern, and that will work with a pinstripe pattern, or medallions or polka dots or something. Maybe it gets a little harder the busier the tie gets. Paisley maybe, but then that's how busy is your paisley? I wondered how long it would take for him to get to polo shirts. Again, many come in stripes, so also trying to pair a horizontal with a vertical is going to be a little bit trickier. He was kind of showing some outfits that I was on board with more than some of his usual options. I didn't think it was a horrible video. Nautical, yeah. I still think I'd be more inclined to collect the black or charcoal stripes than the lighter blue options. But perhaps someday I shall seek out some nice true navy options, but I haven't yet. I have some blue suits that are nice enough, but I usually reach for earth tones instead because that's more my style. And seasonally, I can't really wear suits again as much in the warmer weather as the cooler weather. So I'm not usually going for a total nautical look with the kind of thing, but this is not a rowing blazer pattern either. Then he talked about yellow. I said yellow is a great spring color, but more often it's better with pastels than with, heavier, solid primary colors or whatever. But it can also be often a nautical pairing with blue, again, for sure. That is definitely a thing. And I did show that one jacket that I had in the varsity. I don't have it in here. It's got the gold or yellow sleeves and the blue, but it's not a dark, and of course it's not pinstripes, but it's a typical kind of sporty school color thing that isn't only nautical, but can be nautical. But a lot of nautical stuff can also be red, white, and blue. Again, I wear that more in the summer. This is springtime still, so I'm not really wearing red, that kind of thing yet. Especially helps me on laundry day to not be trying to wash reds with white or khaki or that kind of thing. Okay, so that was, like I said, I didn't cover all his video was like 20 minutes long, and I didn't want to cover all his, and we wrapped it up pretty quick, but that was a brief introduction on pinstripes without getting too outfit specific like he did. Maybe someday I'll put some pairings together similar and kind of show you my take in the community menu. As always, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If there's some aspect you think I forgot or whatever, or something, you'd like to see some photographs of options. Like I said, a lot of these kind of products I've already done multiple videos about, so I didn't want this to be too redundant, and we're already a little bit longer than I kind of thought, but it is what it is. We covered two categories, reactions to a reasonable amount. Like I said, boycott Tinder. Leave me your comments or questions preferably, but comments are still, usually welcome if it's relevant as opposed to just random. Another pinstripe though. The hickory stripes, I had been showing these in the overalls videos. It's not the same kind of pinstripes, and he doesn't show any of this kind of thing in his video. But those of you who love Americana, I got like 3 videos about this, different brands: Roundhouse, Big Smith, Key. I don't have this pattern in the Liberty, but I do have the Liberty. And then, of course, as I showed, whoops, where'd you come from? Again, technically these are pinstripe shirts, but I wouldn't always try to pair this with that, was the point. The other shirts would work better in that scenario. Before I forget. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. And like I said, until you jog my memory about something I forgot, I'm trying to be pretty comprehensive.